If you're anything like me, you know the importance of eating healthy, but you don't always have the time or willpower to cook with all the colors of the rainbow. Organifi's superfood blends make it easy and enjoyable to add more variety and nutrition to your day. I am loving Organifi Pure as part of my daily routine to help clear morning brain fog, improve digestion, and support mental clarity. It includes 9 superfoods and compounds and is rich in beta-glucans and antioxidants. It's clinically proven to promote healthy BDNF levels derived from coffee berry. It also contains ginger root, lemon, monk fruit, digestive enzymes, and coconut water to make a delicious brain-boosting lemonade snack. Organifi has a ton of delicious organic blends you can try. Just add to water, stir with a spoon, and enjoy anytime for more energy, nutrition, hormone balance, and peace of mind. And the best part is that you can experience Organifi's high-quality superfoods without breaking the bank with a price that works out to less than $3 a day. Head over to www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou for 20% off your entire order. That's www.organifi.com/bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Alison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast, where we are starting a brand new series. I am so excited about. The series is called Friends on Friendship. We're going to take a deep dive into all the different nuances of friendship. I've invited some of my own friends on, some new ones, some really, really old ones that I've had for a really long time. We're going to talk about how to make friends. We're going to talk about how to learn when a person is trustworthy. We're going to talk about what to do when you need to move away from a friendship. So we're going to cover a whole lot in this series. It's a great way to kick off the summer, and I'm so excited to have Curt Thompson along with his friends Pepper Sweeney and Cella on the podcast today. Curt Thompson is a psychiatrist and interpersonal neurobiologist. You know him as the author of The Soul of Shame, The Soul of Desire, and he has a brand new book coming out this August called The Deepest Place. I had an opportunity to preview the book. It's a powerful look at suffering and hope. You can pre-order it now. It's such a great book. Super excited about that. And he also hosts the Being Known podcast with Pepper and Amy. And I had a chance to get to be a fly on the wall when I was at a conference that Curt puts on each year and see their friendship in action. And it's what gave me this idea to not only just talk to Curt about friendship, but to invite him on with his friends so that they could talk together about what it's like to work together, to create together, to share joy together, to share struggles together. So I'm just so excited. They're here to kick off this series. In this episode, there is a moment where I'm surprised by the fact that I get moved to tears a little bit, and I name it to them and kind of can't figure out what's happening. And as I thought about it, the few days after we recorded, I realized that I was having what we call a glimmer. A glimmer is a nervous system response that's the opposite of a trigger, right? When you think about yourself being triggered by someone, it's usually negative. It usually kind of activates you in a negative way. Well, a glimmer is sort of my version of going to an art museum. You know, some people go to an art museum or they go out into nature and they see beauty, and it prompts them to just see the glory of God. You know, wow, God, how did you make that beautiful tree or that whale? You know, I went whale watching recently and was just amazed, you know, by how did God create these whales, you know? Or you go to an art museum and you see a beautiful piece of art or something that just prompts you to be transported into a place of wonder, a place of beauty, a place of awe. And it can take us to an experience of just joy in being part of God's creation that is just so magnificent, right? As I thought back over it, I think in that moment in the episode, I was just having a glimmer, just the joy and the playfulness and the levity that was spilling out of their connections to each other was spilling over onto me. And it was just really beautiful and a really lovely moment. And I was grateful to have this opportunity to share that with them. So without further ado, I am just so excited to bring you my conversation with Curt, Pepper, and Amy to kick off this new series, Friends on Friendship. So we're starting this new series on friendship. And I was thinking about friendship and I thought to myself, I don't want to teach about friendship. I want to try to show it. And I thought about you, Curt, because while you may not use the word friendship to describe what you're doing, I really think everything you're doing is about, not everything, but a lot of what you're doing is about creating intentional friendship. I think you call it confessional communities, you call it connection, you call it being seen, being known. Everything you do is this idea of being known. And isn't that what friendship at its heart is about? And so I couldn't think of anybody better to have on but you. And then I got a chance back in October when I got to come to your conference, held through the Center for Being Known, where I was a speaker, to not only learn from you, but to witness you with some of your friends. And it honestly moved me personally to see the three of you behind the scenes finding so much joy in this work that you do together. That almost moved me more than reading about, a treatise on why friendship is important or, as helpful as that is. And so I thought to myself, I want to have the three of you on to talk about that. I want you to touch, Curt, on this idea of confessional communities because I love it. And actually next week, I'm going to have someone on who has benefited from an intentional confessional community that you helped her to set up. You are really going out in the world trying to get people to be more intentional about bringing people around them in ways that really, I think God wants us to. So I'm going to stop now, but that's my prelude to why I wanted not only you, Curt, but Pepper and Amy, who I don't know as well. I'm excited to get to know, but most of all, just having observed and witnessed and kind of been a silent, quiet, like witness of this friendship that you have really ministered to me. It changed me. It inspired me to go out and try to do more of that. So with that in mind, tell me a little bit, Curt, let's start with you, about what you think about friendship, why you think it's so important, what inspires you to be so passionate about helping others set up these communities where they are known deeply by other humans.
Well, I'll see if I can do this in 30 seconds.
Because he can't say anything
I'm
in
going to
30
take
seconds.
the over. I'm going to go with the over.
Let's just start by saying that this episode's going to be a little longer than you're used to because Curt has a lot of words.
He's very generous with his words.
He is.
We'll say that.
He is. We talked about having quotes of Curt's on T-shirts and selling them, but then we realized that every shirt had to be an extra large because there'd be too many words.
Extra large.
Just way too many. Extra large.
Oh,
right?
then you went to the trouble to say yes, and we would also have to we print them on the inside of the T-shirt.
Yes,
It had to be
reversible.
reversible.
This is exactly what I meant about showing versus telling friendship.
Yeah.
I mean, how often...
Is that what they're showing? I'm trying to catch up to the train. I think I don't quite get it. Week after week, I got to put up with this.
Uh-huh.
And then they call it friendship. Yeah.
I love it.
Well, so here's the thing. In the spirit of what you are longing for this episode to be, I would offer that a way to respond to your question would be for Pepper to talk about how this friendship got started. Because I think in describing that, he's going to offer a reflection and an answer to your question. How's that sound?
I love it.
Well, so we met while all working on a project with Nicole Johnson, who had put together this unique retreat experience called Seasons Weekend. And the weekend was full of artistic endeavors. It was full of just beauty. And the whole purpose of those weekends was for us to guide this group of people through this experience. And as a team, we came together and we would be together for 5 days And in those 5 days that were very intense, we would work and, with the people that we were working with until relatively late. And then our team would stay up until the wee hours of the morning, getting to know each other better and, building those friendships there. So in the beginning, it was a very unique way for friendships to start because it was almost like 4 times a year we were going away to camp and we were all together breaking bread at every meal together for 5 days, staying up to the wee hours every night. And we very quickly developed, because of the unique nature of this, it was a little bit to our advantage in that we knew we only had a certain amount of time together. So we needed to be vulnerable with each other if we were going to do it. Right. And so that happened pretty quickly, where all of a sudden we were sharing things with each other that you wouldn't necessarily share with people at such an early time. So our friendship, it was escalated really quick and went deep really quick. It wasn't just a wide friendship. It was a very deep friendship that started in that way. But then it was also unique in that we weren't really living our lives together, except for those 4 times a year where we were coming together 5 days a year. And so that also, it almost makes it a utopian friendship because there's not a lot of ruptures that are happening that you have to repair where you do in everyday normal friendships. And so, yeah, it was a unique beginning. And then also like this podcast that we're doing together, that we've been now doing together for a couple of years, I think just the element of us having something that we are coming together for with a purpose that forces us to be together in this project has helped carry that relationship on. So yeah, so that's kind of the how it all got started and how it's continued.
I love that. It reminds me, what you just said reminds me of how C.S. Lewis talks about friendship and the 4 loves as different from lovers, in that lovers face each other in a way. I think what he means by that is they're working out their relationship. That's part of being in a romantic relationship, whereas friends are facing forward. They're working toward a purpose outside of themselves, or enjoying a hobby or enjoying an activity or enjoying a work or enjoying creating something together. Not that lovers can't do that too, but that's just what that reminded me of, is that you started in this context. Your friendship started in this context about being part of something bigger than yourselves.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
I think, though, I appreciate your reflection on Lewis's work. In some respects, I wouldn't want to think of those 2 different kinds of loves in binary terms, because I think that they're, Pepper, as you mentioned, part of what it means to turn toward each other, even as friends, includes our sharing parts of our stories that felt risky. There have been plenty of moments when the 3 of us have, with each of us, revealed things about ourselves that we don't like about ourselves, and that we are worried that when the other hears this part of my story, like I can't predict what they're going to do. And so it feels risky. Mm. And so it is the signature element, I think, of this notion of being vulnerable. And of course, even though we haven't had, as Pepper said, we haven't had ruptures to repair in the same way that we might have if we were living together, the act of repairing a rupture is yet still one that requires great vulnerability. And it is this common ground of vulnerability that I would say that we share, in which I feel this deep sense of being known. It's not like, it's not only that we have a common project that we're creating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That act of creativity is certainly part of it. But like we often talk about in the Genesis account of the end of chapter 2, where to create beauty and goodness in the world most durably, it requires nakedness. It requires vulnerability. It requires our willingness to say, here's the place where I don't feel like I'm doing very well. Not just about, we just this morning, it was not a major thing, but in our new series, I was not feeling up to the task of something that one of the elements. And there is a certain part of me that feels bad, that I'm like, I'm not going to be able to bring my best self to the table. And like, what are Pepper and Amy going to think? And, there is we have enough capital, I think now in our relationship, that I know that I need to just say, here's where I am. I don't feel like I'm where I really want to be. And it feels bad that I'm confusing all those kinds of things. And I think it's practicing those little things, being committed to practicing not letting any stone that has to do with our relationship be left unturned.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to one thing that I've experienced through this friendship is, although we haven't experienced a lot of ruptures, having the relationship with these 2, with Amy and Curt has really aided and helped me to be able to go and face ruptures and amend ruptures in relationships with people that I do have every single day. But it's because of the relationship that I have with these guys and things that I've learned from them and within our relationship that have helped my other relationships greatly.
Well, and I would add to that not only have we, like, the tools that we've learned with the three of us, or that I've learned with the two of you, but then knowing that you guys are in the room with me when I go to make amends or repair ruptures, then I feel much more equipped and like confident that it's going to be okay, even if no matter how it goes.
Right. Totally.
You don't mean literally in the room. You mean knowing that you have this sort of foundation of health and strength.
Right. Yeah. They're
gives
not
you the
with me.
confidence. Yeah.
Right. They're with me in my mind.
Right. But
sometimes. Yes. Go ahead.
The voices in your head.
Yes.
But I think, like, so you raise an important question, Alison, when you say, well, not literally in the room. And yet we would say, when we do this work in the confessional communities, if you want to step out onto the ice of physics, if you will, I would say, like, no, I actually do take them in my brain, in my embedded neural networks. The memory of Pepper and Amy being with me, like, literally has the effect of allowing my body to be at ease. And so I can imagine them. I practice imagining Pepper's sitting on my left, Amy's sitting on my right. And I'm going to have this conversation that, like, I otherwise it would be a very different conversation for me if I was feeling like I'm having to do this by myself. Mm-hmm. And so you're right. They're not literally in the room. And yet, if we take the material world and quantum mechanics seriously, I don't know.
That makes so much sense to me. And I want to circle back to this meeting where you went deep and that you don't necessarily have the day-to-day, because so in my experience, in my life, I have two childhood friends and my sister who I've literally known since I was born. We were best friends the first 18 years of our lives, same ages, our families, grew up together, whatever. We kind of lost touch. We've started intentionally coming back together. We try to come back together a couple of times a year. And what you said resonates. We don't have the typical rupture repair because we live all over the country from each other. We have very different lives, day-to-day lives. But that history that is literally in our DNA, when we started being intentional about spending time together again, in person, regularly, I understand exactly what you're saying. It creates some kind of foundational health, confidence, courage. Creativity, all the good things that we want, even when I'm not talking to them on a daily basis. And those are some of the most important friendships. Now, I thought that was attributed to the longevity. When we get together, we are literally going back. I'm literally going back into my 5-year-old self, with this person that shares that memory with me, which is just so astonishing to me, the power of that. But what I'm hearing you say is, in this concentrated environment in which you got to know each other, where you went really deep and into the layers and layers of who you were quickly, you were able to create but very significant shared experiences that are a seedbed going forward. And that's just powerful for folks when they don't have, I think that's good for people to hear, that you can create these friendships at any time.
I mean, I would also say it mattered. I think part of what made it possible for our relationships to be as rich as they are is that there were multiple ways in which we were interfacing with each other on these weekends. There was depth of sharing that was vulnerable. There was creativity. There was cognitive work. Like we were Pepper's kind of producing it, and Pepper's like directing the weekend. Like we're not just like, there is a program that has to be like timed and so forth. And I know that he had to work hard because he was working with me. And so I'm well aware of how hard the work was for him. Amy would come, and like, Amy is like, she's a contractor. She comes with her tools, and she built things every weekend. Mm-hmm. And so there was the creativity aspect of this that demanded effort. Each of us had to be present for the attendees in ways that we had to be giving, we had to be empathic, and we had to be pouring out. There was so much humor.
So much laughter. We laughed.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the first weekend Pepper and I meet, there's this iconic story of us. We were going up to Nicole's hotel executive suite to have a meeting, I think, wasn't it? Is that what we were doing?
Yeah.
And it's later in the evening. I can't get down the hallway because Pepper has said 2 or 3 things. I'm leaning up against the wall. I can't get down the hall. Like, I'm a grown man. I can't get down the hallway because
he slid down the wall onto the floor. He was laughing so hard, which made me laugh so hard. And that was really early in our relationship. I mean, laughter, I don't know, Curt, if you want to talk about this, laughter is such a connector. It's such a universal thing that can connect us. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think these, we say if you go to see a stand-up routine and you're in a room that is pretty intimate, right? If you're in a room of 200 people, but it's all pretty packed in, like, vulnerability is just a wash in the room. The comic has to be vulnerable. The moment I start to laugh at something. Okay, I was on a college campus not that long ago, in which, as I was speaking to the students, there were moments when I thought I was speaking to cardboard cutouts. And I'm like, wow, I must be like, I'm like generationaling myself out of this community. Later, I spoke with some of the leadership, some of the other students who were saying, oh my gosh, like they were just so dialed in. So like they were, and I'm like, wow, please explain. And they said, in this particular setting, in this particular university, it would be common that if you were to respond to a speaker or to a professor as if you were moved by them, as if you were being touched, as if it would matter to you, as if what they had to say was valuable, you would be at risk for other people around you scorning you. I'm like, okay, that's a new thing. I wasn't aware that that's a thing, but apparently that's a thing. But what it speaks to is like how risky it is to be vulnerable, even when you are allowing yourself to be receptive to anything that's coming toward you that moves you. And this is what comedians do, right? They move us. They say the things that nobody else in the crowd will say. And pretty much that's Pepper and Amy. They say the things in the crowd that nobody else will want to say. But anyway, that whole sense of vulnerability with humor is another way that it creates flexibility for us to be more deeply connected.
And we're laughing also at ourselves often with the comedian, which again, as we started off this episode, immediately, that's why I called it, that's to me a mark of friendship. Being able to hold yourself lightly, laughing at oneself, which is such a key ingredient.
And because it's such an antithesis to the shame that we often respond with when we imagine ourselves, right? It's like, oh no, this is actually joyful. Like people are like, we are enjoying each other in the middle of our vulnerabilities and our mistakes and our brokenness and so forth.
I love that.
Early on in our podcast, one person wrote a comment on a social post or something saying they wish that I wouldn't tease Curt so much. And yet this is what it really is. It's not that, I mean, we're bringing out the best in one another, right? I mean, we're able to laugh at these things. It's not anybody trying to one up anybody or there's no place at all in there that's like manipulative or mean or anything like that. It's all love.
Yeah. Especially when we talk about Amy.
Well,
always.
Let's don't go that far.
Amy, what's your experience been like coming in with these two guys and this friendship?
Ooh.
Careful.
I mean, it's been careful. Yeah. No, it's been fabulous. I mean, Nicole Johnson, I've worked with her for almost 22 years, and Pep has worked with her longer. So I've known Pep for 22 years. So we have that, and then we come together and meet Curt, and it's fabulous. I mean, they do, like, this sounds trite, but they bring out the best in me. Like, they are a safe place, and when I say I take them into the rooms with me, when they go with me, and they make me a better person. And then from that place, I can, create beauty because they are part of that foundation. So it's been amazing.
Do you ever feel like all the health advice out there is a little bit too generic? Maybe you're doing everything right. You're trying to eat well, you're drinking water, you're trying to exercise regularly, but you just can't seem to reach your goals. Well, that's why I am so excited about today's sponsor, Wild Health. Wild Health's fully virtual, personalized precision medicine service is revolutionizing the healthcare industry with genetics-based precision medicine. They offer healthcare that's tailored to your unique genetic makeup, lifestyle, and health goals. It will not only help you achieve your specific goals, but also completely transform your health and well-being. You start off with Wild Health's proprietary genetic test, a comprehensive blood panel, and a thorough medical intake. If you are looking for the most high-touch healthcare experience on the market, Wild Health's premium program is for you. Members are equipped with a full care team made up of industry-leading providers, including direct and unlimited access to a board-certified precision medicine physician, accredited health coach, and more. Better yet, Wild Health just opened 10 spots in their premium program for Best of You listeners. So if you've been searching for a better alternative to traditional healthcare and want to take your health to new heights, look no further. Visit www.wildhealth.com/premium to apply for membership today. Whether you're someone on the go who needs a quick, healthy snack to grab on the way out or someone who needs a stocked snack drawer at home, Nuts.com has you covered. Nuts.com is your one-stop shop for freshly roasted nuts, dried fruit, sweets, pantry staples like specialty flours, and more. Their wide selection means there is something for everyone. I love nuts as a healthy snack in the afternoon when I am just dying for something to eat and I need something that tastes good but won't set me off course on my health goals. My family loves the bourbon pecans, the cashews, the pistachios. They are all so good. And there are gluten-free options, organic choices, and other diet-friendly products. Whether you're looking for something sweet, savory, or need to stock up on everyday cooking essentials, you will find something at Nuts.com. You can shop a la carte at any time or opt into hassle-free auto delivery so you never run out of your favorite items. Right now, Nuts.com is offering new customers a free gift with purchase and free shipping on orders of $29 or more at Nuts.com/bestofyou. So go check out all the delicious options at Nuts.com/bestofyou. You'll receive a free gift and free shipping when you spend $29 or more. That's Nuts.com/bestofyou. So, Amy, I resonate with what you're saying because literally right now in this moment, the minute your faces popped onto the screen, I know Curt a little bit. I don't know Pepper and Amy hardly at all. I feel it right now. I feel joy. I feel a little bit of moisture at the back of my eyes, like just connection. I immediately am not looking at my script. I could care less. I just want to be with you guys. I want to have a conversation. I feel alive. And I'm thinking, you guys are making me think of my dearly beloved friends with whom I have that laughter, right? My mind is going, oh, yes, I know, yes, me too. I get that. There's just love, What is this ingredient? And this is what I felt when I was with you guys in DC that seems so intuitive. My nervous system, my body says, oh, yes, this is so life-giving. This brings out the best in all of us. But you don't find it all the time. How do we put words on this, for folks, this feeling of connection, of realness? I'm trying to think of what it feels like. It feels like I can just be myself, as you're saying. Mm-hmm. Safety. How do we cultivate this? How do we bring this more into being? Maybe what I'm noticing is the safety and connection between the three of you spills over, and I'm experiencing it now with you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is just beautiful.
I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was being intentional about time spent. And our first gathering with Seasons Weekend, it wasn't, we didn't know each other, so we weren't really being intentional about, but then following that, we were intentional about spending time together.
Yeah, Alison, I when you talked about intentionally getting together with your sister and your longtime friend, it is, I think the data shows that most people change their friends every 7 years because of life situations. And so if you aren't intentional, and like this podcast that we do together, we're very intentional about it. There's work that we have to do between the recordings and we're connected with each other then. And before we start recording, we're sharing our lives with each other for sometimes an hour before we even start recording. We're very intentional about staying connected and continuing to be vulnerable with each other. And I think maybe what you are feeling is that sense of the three of us have created a safe space. And for me, I experience from Amy and Curt, I know their hearts. I know that I am safe with them. And so I think that's maybe what you're feeling as well, just that we all know that we're safe with each other. So you've come into this and yeah.
It's really literally what I'm hearing you say is that your work that you do together literally is an overflow of your friendship. And so you just gave me some examples. So prior to recording, you are coming together and not just getting right to work, you're connecting to each other as humans. Is that right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah. I think too, I know plenty of people who I know who once a year go for a 3-day golf trip. They're intentional. It doesn't look anything like this. There are plenty of communities that gather intentionally for a whole range of reasons. I think that in some respects, Alison, what we try to do is not to overplay this hand, but we talk about attachment, right? And what is attachment? Like when a parent is with their newborn, the parent is with intention, being with the newborn with joy, like the whole notion, like we're doing this with joy, but we are also going to, with intention, be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. It's not just the intention itself, it's the intention toward what? We talk about, the first wound of the Bible happens on the second page, where Adam is put into general anesthesia and he wakes up with a chest wound. And he's like, what the heck? But what's the intention of the wound? The wound is beauty and goodness, right? It's poetry and song that he responds. He's not paying so much attention to that wound. The very next page of the Bible, you have the second wound that begins with the conversation between the snake and the woman. Mm-hmm. Both of these acts are intentional. God's act with Adam, the snake's act with the woman. But the outcomes are very different. The intended outcomes are very different. And I think that the nature of that season's weekend itself required of us, we weren't going to be able to do that work if we ourselves were not going to be vulnerable with each other. And I think that when we are practicing that over time, we continue to strengthen our comfort and confidence with each other. We can use the word safe or safety, and that's, comfort and confidence at being our full naked selves, our full vulnerable selves. And the more we do it, the more confident we become, the more we do it, and so forth. And I think that when Jesus in John 12 says he says, like, look, the world's going to know that you're mine the way you love one another. That's how the world's going to know you're mine. Not by going out and preaching. It's going to know because of the way you love one another. And this is what it means for us to love one another. We're going to be vulnerable with each other on purpose. And then people come around this and they walk in the room like, wait, what's happening here? If that makes sense.
Totally.
And so I think it requires people to willingly be committed to vulnerability in that way.
I appreciate what you're saying. Intentionality is one piece of the equation, but just as you said, you can be intentional with your drinking buddies every Friday night, and escape everything.
Right.
And so it's the combination of intentionality and substance/vulnerability. And it strikes me listening to you that each of you as individuals has done some of that work internally. So you've become a safe person for yourself with God. And I don't know which one is the chicken or egg. I always go back and forth on this. And then, which allows you that capacity to do that with another, and or being with each other has opened up the capacity for internal safety. And all of that becomes this sort of virtuous cycle, as opposed to a vicious cycle of this just levity and light, all these qualities of the self, what Dick Schwartz calls, the qualities of self energy, calm, curiosity, creativity, courage, connection, confidence. But I'm sensing it from the relationship, the dynamic among the three of you, which is so interesting. Yeah.
Totally. And I again, not that we can't say enough about Trinitarian theology, But there's a sense in which even when you have two people in the room,
Yeah.
there are elements of human relational dynamism that are not complete. To have a third person in the room changes things significantly. And, we could talk forever and a day about that. But I think the fact that there are three of us at the very least, the fact that we're not all dudes, right? I can't say enough for how much it means to me that I can have a deep relationship with a woman who's not my wife, but who gets me and who would go to the wall for me. I got experience of that with other men,
Yeah. It's powerful.
and I got two people here who would do that for me.
Yeah.
And it's one thing, like, I know that I would go to the wall for Curt and Pep, but then for Curt and Pep to know that, does that make sense? Like the power of that? Yeah.
Yes, it's true. And they receive it and absorb it and allow it to change them, which is vulnerability. It's powerful. It's powerful. It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So here's a question. As I'm listening, there's so much of an obsession, about personality type and qualities and all these things. And I'm sitting here listening going, is the key ingredient vulnerability over and above what kind of qualities or what kind of personality, in terms of creating this safety? Isn't it so much deeper than compatibility, fit? I'm just sensing something so much more substantive.
So for 15 years, I met a gentleman who was sort of spiritual mentor for me at 6:00 in the morning at Dupar's restaurant in Studio City, California. And it takes to get to that place of vulnerability and to be, it takes time, it takes effort. And for me, it has been the key to the deeper friendships. I mean, it's just, and what Curt is teaching on the Being Known podcast, the interesting thing about it is we're living it at the same time. And so I'm gaining so much from doing this podcast with these two. And it started with the vulnerability. That's where it started for us, for me, with the two of them, because that's what, for me, takes the level of depth of the relationship to a place where you can be open to learning and hearing and believing in one another.
Okay, can I pile onto that, though, and say something additional? Because I think the vulnerability is important.
So I just want to say that I always feel so safe that I can say anything that I want because Curt will make it make sense. That's how safe I feel in our podcast. I can say anything. I can talk about anything, and Curt will turn it into, in Leviticus. I think this is what you're trying to say. So right now, Curt's going to give you the exegesis on what I just said. The hermeneutics of Pepper Sweeney.
We all need a Curt.
Yeah. Go ahead, Curt.
Can I just say, Curt does not need all of this, okay? You might all need a Curt. Curt doesn't need all of this. I don't need any of this. So this is about vulnerability. Like, look, it was not my idea to do the podcast.
True.
Okay. Look, thanks for emphasizing that, Pep. Right. Yeah. So it was right.
It wasn't mine either.
Yeah, right. Okay. So Amy, what were we? We were 2 years into Seasons Weekend. At some point, Amy says, and I don't remember the time frame of this. Amy says, I think you should think about doing a podcast.
And he said, what's a podcast? He said, sure. I don't know what that means, but sure. No, that didn't quite go like that.
But close. It was close to that.
It was close.
Right. So I basically said, I don't know. I don't listen to them. I don't know. Oh, I don't have time. I got all these excuses. I can't do this. But she would, on occasion, keep coming. I think you need to think about doing this. And at some point, she also wove in this idea, because I think in the course of conversation, I'm like, I can't invite people. Podcast, you invite guests on. I don't have time for that. I can't do that. And she said, well, what if it wasn't just you talking? What if you had a conversation partner? Someone maybe Pepper.
Pepper Sweeney.
Pepper Sweeney. And so I still, I wasn't ready to do it because I had other projects that were going on. And then I completed the manuscript of The Soul Desire. and felt like I was just a big exhale. And it was so odd how I finished that manuscript and suddenly, and it's just the oddest thing how, like, just a matter of timing, suddenly everything just, like, the penny dropped, and I felt like, let's go do this. I have no idea what we're going to do. I wasn't confident. I was not in that moment confident in me doing a podcast. I was confident in Amy's and Pepper's confidence in whatever it is that they're thinking about.
Curt often talks about the fact that we can't imagine our futures until someone else imagines them for us.
Right.
So often people come into your life and they'll say, I see this in you, right?
Totally. So what we're doing, like, it is Amy calling me forward in a specific place where I feel extraordinarily vulnerable. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. No. So I think that's another part of the vulnerability. It's a matter of not just that we reveal parts of us that are unsteady and broken and imperfect, but it's also a matter of our being willing to respond to someone else touching a part of us that is vulnerable and saying, hey, I want to come into that room in your house and I want you and me and Pepper to go someplace with that. And you're like, how can anybody go someplace with that? Like, it's a mess in that room. And they're like, oh, we're not just here to be with you. We're here to do something beautiful with the very thing that you think just needs to be kept hidden.
Yeah. Calling each other into more and more being, really calling each other out more and more. That's the virtuous cycle of friendship, is more and more and more and more goodness, more and more of who you really are and the gifts you bring only can come out through the crucible, the context of friendship. That's beautiful.
This really should be the Amy and Pepper podcast. That's what it should be called. It should be called the Amy and Pepper podcast. So
it'd be a lot shorter.
I don't know, but they knew they could push my vulnerability so far, but not too far. They knew that I was probably going to have like the Being Known podcast was the name and all the things.
Yeah.
They're just
He'll catch up. He'll catch up with us.
Yeah.
Curt, this may be projection, and so if it is, just completely discard it. I think so much of the work that you and I are both trained to do, you're a therapist, you work individually with people, you're a speaker, a writer. I relate to all those categories. They're all very solitary endeavors in many ways. And so I'm curious, what that was like for you inviting, you've kind of alluded to it. And maybe that for you maybe you wouldn't have looked at them as solitary endeavors. So that could be projection from my part. But how do you invite people into your processes?
Well, I think I've learned this. I mean, and I'm still learning the reality of this, that because we are rhythmic people, to be human is to be rhythmic. We are, one of the ways that we're rhythmic is this continual movement back and forth between life and work in solitude and life and work in community. Just like exhaling and inhaling, just like the pulse of your heartbeat. And I would say that the work that we do best as therapists, when we are doing our individual work kind of in solitude with another patient, for instance, if you're writing, you're in your office and you're banging away at the computer, but that's only going to flourish to the degree that I'm then taking that and then being back in community in some way, shape, or form. And so the best of the work as a writer, a speaker, a therapist is made possible because you're in rhythmic connection with the community. So living and working in the practice that I have, the best time of my week at the practice is every Wednesday from 11:45 to 1 o'clock when our staff meets together. It's the best part of my week of the practice because I can take what's happening in that room and know that I'm not by myself with what's going to come in all the other moments with patients. And so it feels like then this becomes one more of those communities. Our podcast becomes one more of those communities in which I'm being nourished. And I think we each find nourishment and we each provide nourishment for each other.
Yeah. Yes.
That enables me then to go back to go do the speaking thing that I'm going to do the next day, or the individual therapy work that you're going to do the next week. And so that would be how I reflect on that.
I am so happy to have discovered Sunday's Food for Dogs. It's nutritious, affordable, air-dried dog food that contains 90% meat, 10% vegetables, and 0 synthetic nutrients. Sunday's was co-founded by Dr. Tori, a practicing veterinarian, and besides USDA beef and all-natural chicken, you'll find digestive aids and disease-fighting antioxidants for your beloved pets. Dog lovers report noticeable health improvements in their pups, including softer fur, fresher breath, better poops, and more energy. My dogs love Sundays. I have 2. One in particular is a picky eater. Normal dog food just doesn't work for her, but they love Sundays, and we feel so good about feeding them the best quality food. We want them in our family for a long time to come, and Sundays is giving them our very best. Unlike other fresh dog food, Sundays is 0 prep, 0 mess, and 0 stress. It's shelf stable, which means it's easy for you to feed your pup top quality food. Every order ships right to your door, so you'll never worry about running out of dog food again. And best of all, it costs 40% less than other healthy dog food brands because Sundays doesn't waste money shipping frozen packages. Instead, they spend on what matters most, sourcing the best all-natural ingredients for your pup. We worked out a special deal for our dog-loving listeners. Get 35% off your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfordogs.com/bestofyou or use code bestofyou at checkout. That's sundaysfordogs.com/bestofyou. Upgrade your pup to Sundays and feel good about the food you feed your dog. I love that idea of the rhythms of aloneness and togetherness, of solitary and connected. And just thinking here as we have just a few more minutes, how do you, in practical ways, create those rhythms in your life? Curt, you just kind of gave us a glimpse. This podcast group is one for you guys. And I love the idea that this isn't just, I heard you very clearly say you're being nourished. You're pouring out through this podcast. You're helping a lot of people, but you're also being nourished by it because of this trio. And that's possible in workspaces. That's possible in our families. That's possible in lots of different contexts where we're both, it's not binary of I give out here, I receive here. There are ways to kind of create rhythms. I really love that. So I'm curious, Amy and Pepper, do you have thoughts on that in your own lives, how you incorporate rhythms of togetherness and apartness?
Well, I will say, using this podcast as an example. So we meet normally on Fridays pretty much every week, and we have a nice chunk of time blocked out in the mornings. And that has become a major rhythm for me, where that really helps me carry on through the week. And then I know that that's coming again. I work a lot, so I'm either on the road touring with shows, or I'm sitting in this little room by myself in front of a computer, which is 90% of my work is done by myself. I have Zoom calls all day, all that kind of thing. I have other friendships and things here locally, but I've relied on this podcast as a major rhythm in my life. And as a matter of fact, when we go on hiatus, we'll start texting each other. Okay, it's been too long. This is driving me crazy. We got to get back together. So yeah, this has been definitely a rhythm for me that has fed into me and helped me to be a better person, I think.
Are you surprised by that, Pepper, how significant this has become? Did you anticipate that?
I'm very surprised by it, actually. I just said to Curt this morning, I think I remember when we started this, I thought, well, if we can get maybe 400 people to listen to this podcast, that's going to be a major win. And, Curt's work's going to get out there to more people. And, it's great to be in front of a room of 400 people. We just hit 1,000,008 downloads this week. And it's a huge surprise to me. But I do think also I wouldn't have done this podcast. I wouldn't put this much effort and time and work and energy into something if I wasn't going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting out of it is these relationships, is the learnings. Like I said, I think doing this podcast makes me a better person on so many levels. It just makes me a better friend, a better husband, a better dad, a better son, all the things. It really is something. And I think I anticipated some of that, but not to the extent and the importance that it's become in my life.
It's beautiful. What about you, Amy? Are you surprised by the depth and the degree of how much this has shaped you? And if not,
Yeah.
that's kind of a loaded question. Well, no, actually, it doesn't really.
She's not surprised at how much she's shaped Pepper and me. She's not surprised at that at all.
I mean, I am surprised at the impact it's had on me.
Right.
Yes. No, it's both yes and no, because it really is an extension of our relationship. And so I would be surprised. I think I would be more surprised if it didn't impact me, because it would be like, why suddenly did the impact stop?
Yeah.
But what it has taught me too is that, like, I'll use the word endeavors, the different endeavors I have in my life. Like, I have a group, I get together with a group that's just about projects we're working on. And so walking away from that group, knowing they know what I'm working on and they are supportive and caring about that, it's like, I wouldn't have known how to do that group if it weren't for the podcast, I don't think. Because it is an assimilation, if that makes sense. So it's like, now I bring what we have in the podcast to areas of my life.
Interesting.
It has infiltrated my life.
Interesting. So it's
That's
bled
what we
over.
are. We're infiltrators.
Infiltrators. Yeah.
Right.
Right. That's a different podcast.
So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And not just structurally, the DNA of it, who you are, now what you bring to these other pockets, as Curt says, outposts of safety and connection, has fundamentally changed. I do want to compliment you guys, because I do know a lot of stories of folks who were good friends that pivoted into working together and the friendship fell apart. That does happen. And so the fact that's why I'm kind of asking, it's not so much are you surprised, because you're right, it makes sense. You knew the power of these connections. But I would also say there's clearly, and this is where the individual work, I think, is also a component. There's the absence of ego, for lack of a better word, the fact that all three of you are really committed to your own work as you come together, that's allowing this to thrive in new ways as you've brought in a creative partnership, right? I mean, I want to give you guys some credit for that. I don't think that would magically happen just with anybody, any group of friends that said, let's embark on a pretty sophisticated project together.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about the role that is played by my awareness of and confidence in the fact that Pepper and Amy are both doing their work.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm trying to catch up, but they're both. But it really does make a difference. It does make a difference when you're aware that everybody is really, we're trying to do our work. And we know that we do it imperfectly, but we're still trying to do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and Alison, you said and I think this is what you were saying about when you said, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, this work, it's almost simultaneously. Like I would do a little bit of work, and then I would be aware, oh, there's a little bit more of work to do, but I can do it because this safety is building. So it goes hand in hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a dance. It's, we kind of
dance.
do our own work internally, and God kind of puts his finger on certain areas. But if we just live that in a vacuum, it's when we go back into those safe spaces that work gets tended and cultivated. And also sometimes God uses the group to put the finger on things that we need to notice, and then go back into our quiet personal time and say, oh, God, I need to deal that with you. Do I need to deal that with that in the group?
Yeah.
Do I need to deal with that internally? I mean, that's another practical thing. We're running out of time, but I think about that a lot in friendships is, we don't always have to, when we talk about vulnerability, we don't always have to tell our friends every single thing we think or feel, especially as it relates to some of the negative stuff that we all deal with from time to time. And so for me, as I've understood this dance of friendship, I was always somebody who I knew how to be receptive. So if you think about the therapist client or spiritual director, spiritual directee model, I knew how to be the person receiving care. I also know how to be the person giving care. What has been more challenging for me, and really I've only tackled, I'd say, in the last few years, is this dance of interdependence, of sometimes I'm the one holding space for you, sometimes I'm the one needing you to see me, and that is really hard and really painful, right? I can do it if that's your job and that's your role and I pay you to do that. But in the context of friendship, that's hard, and I've been learning about that. And that's kind of where, when you talk about vulnerability, one of the things that as I've grown and learned about that, I don't have to tell friends, these safe spaces, all the things I'm rumbling with inside my soul for it to be vulnerable. But I do need to know that I could, if that makes sense. It's kind of a paradox.
Sure. I love that. I mean, I just and affirm what you're saying. That just makes a ton of sense. I also think that the fact that there are, again, this is not to be, completely prescriptive, but the fact that there are 3 of us in this work and not just 2 of us makes a huge difference. I think because when any one of us needs something hard to say, it's helpful to have to one of the others. Yeah. It's helpful to have a third party in the room that my brain can borrow your brain so that I can talk to the other person's brain. I think it makes a difference in all kinds of ways.
That's a really good word. It's a really practical word for folks, that there's an intensity to one-on-one that, I mean, it's not all bad or good. Again, it's not a binary, but there's something about the group, the collective. I do want you to touch on, Curt, before we close, a little bit about your vision for confessional communities. We'll get into more of a practical example of that in another episode, but can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, listeners can read about it in The Soul Desire. We're beginning the recording of a mini-series on confessional communities. There are also 2 really helpful resource outlets for this. The Center for Being Known, the nonprofit that you came to speak for, the Connections Conference. We just launched our second cohort of 18 confessional communities. There's almost 200 people that are involved in those, where we do online training and then support for that. And then our practice is doing 2.5-day intensives where you come and you kind of up to your neck in the actual work. And we're going to be doing that beginning this fall, committing that to training therapists, clinicians who want to do that in their own practices. And it is a way for us to combine what we know about what the biblical narrative calls us to with neuroscience, with group psychotherapy practices that enables us to move toward formation. And we believe that our minds, our hearts, our souls, our brains, our bodies are more effectively formed in the context of a community. It becomes the crucible in which the shame and the fear that I walk around with is provided a container into which it can come. And as you so artfully like to talk about, the different parts of us can come to be seen, soothed, safe, made to be secure, to then go from that space over time to create beauty and goodness in the world in the other domains of life where it's been difficult for us to do that. And we take those members with us. And if I can take 3 or 4 members with me to do a hard thing, I'm much better able to do it if I have to do it by myself. So like Pepper was saying earlier, it takes time, right? God could have made the world in a day. It took 6. I mean, the arc of the biblical narrative could have taken a lot shorter, but it's taking time. He appears to be taking an amount of time that I'm not always happy with, especially not least in my own life. But these confessional communities can create space in which we are literally loving each other as God has loved us, and such that the world will look at that community and know that we are the disciples of Jesus.
I love that. And so you're if people go to that website, we'll link to it in the show notes. You're helping people figure out the structure of that, the how of that, how to set that up, which is so important. It's just such a need for folks to have these spaces. And again, to circle back to, it's not just the time, it's the quality of that time, how that time is being used. And so you're helping equip people to do that on their own.
That's right.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I could just shoot the breeze with you all day long. I felt when I was with you, I talk about this sometimes, holy envy. And when I feel holy envy, it's I see something in other people. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. I need more of that. And I have literally since October done, because I have friends with this level of depth, oh my gosh, I need to intentionally build some things around that. So thank you. Thank you for inspiring that. Thank you for what you do with the podcast. Tell us where to find the podcast. I think it's just such a great gift. Where can people find it?
Anywhere they listen, Being Known Podcast. They can search it and find it.
And you've got some fun outtake videos on YouTube too.
There's plenty
every
of outtakes.
Episode. Yeah, plenty of outtakes, and every episode has a gag reel. So
I love it. Thank you guys so much. I just appreciate all of you. I appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate you sharing this friendship trio, this Trinitarian friendship with us today as a living example, sort of a parable almost of what this all means in real life. So thank you.
Thanks, Alison. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you, Alison.
Yeah.
Hope to see you again soon.
Right on.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.